Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I'm Carleen Johnson, the Center Square's state government correspondent. It is Friday, day 33 of the 60-day short regular session, which began back on January 12th of this year. Feels like a lot longer ago than that. So one of the most controversial bills of the session, dubbed the Initiative Killer, is expected to get a vote in the state Senate on this Friday. Now, at the time I'm recording this, they are on the floor, but other bills have been coming up. So when we're done here, I'm headed back to the Senate wings to watch what I think should be interesting floor debate on that. Also going to talk to you a little bit about, there's a short update on a story that we covered earlier this week about a Puyallup high school wrestler, a student who has accused the school district of failing to report when she went to them and said that she had to wrestle against a trans wrestler who she says sexually assaulted her. There's just a quick update on that story. And then an interesting bill offered by Representative Stephanie Barnard of Pasco, a bill that really secures a property tax exemption for some of our senior care facilities, making it permanent. And it had unanimous support in the House this week. So we're going to touch on that. And then my colleagues, TJ Martinell and Tim Clauser, have an update on a story with the city of Spokane that was given a very short window of time to come up with a plan to provide clean drinking water to some contaminated sites around the local airport. So a lot to get into, but first let's jump right into the Initiative Killer debate. Now, this is Senate Bill 5973. This is sponsored by Javier Valdez of Seattle, and this is the bill that would require 1,000 signatures. So if you have somebody that wants to run an initiative, Let's Go Washington, or some other group that wants to run an initiative, they would have to go out and get 1,000 signatures of registered voters to say, yeah, if you run this initiative, I will sign my name by this. I'm in support of whatever you're doing. Then take those 1,000 signatures and go to the Secretary of State, and then get a title for the initiative, and then allow the Secretary of State to say, yeah, you've got the green light now to run your initiative. Go out there and start gathering signatures. So it's sort of a double process. It would also ban the practice of paying signature gatherers for the number of signatures that they acquire. You could still pay them by the hour to say, okay, go out and gather signatures outside the Fred Meyer today, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it has, you might get 12 signatures, you might get 1,000. So you could understand the motivation for the folks backing initiatives might be to say, let's pay you per signature, whether it's $1 or whatever it is, the going rate is. Opponents of that system say that, it kind of opens the door for fraud, and for some of those signature gatherers to say, hey, there's a candy bar over here if you sign. Not that that's happening, but that's the suggestion of opponents and supporters of this bill. A lot of this is directed at Let's Go Washington and the millionaire founder, Brian Haywood, who has dug into his own pockets to back some of the recent initiative efforts that have gone to voters, including the two that are going to go to voters this November to reinstate the Parental Bill of Rights and also to protect girls' sports and do away with some of the trans athletes that are, competing in women's sports. And Republicans say this is necessary. They want the legislature to vote on the initiatives, or at least, push them out or reject them completely. Majority Democrats have said, no, we're going to just send them straight to the ballot. So this initiative killer bill is going to be some fierce debate on the Senate floor today. I spoke with State GOP Chairman Representative Jim Walsh about the initiative killer bill this morning, and here's part of that conversation.
These bills that are designed to interfere with how initiatives work are patently unconstitutional. The state constitution is crystal clear that the people reserve to themselves the right of initiative and referendum. And these efforts to try to use statutory law and kind of whittle around the edges of the right to initiative are patently unconstitutional. They will lose if they're passed into law and challenged in court. The idea, too, is inherently anti-democratic. And I get a little tired of hearing some of my colleagues on the progressive left constantly whining about threats to our democracy when they are literally supporting a threat to our democracy.
So, related to this, we learned today from a very short post on X from the U.S. Department of Education that they are now investigating the Puyallup School District for an incident we wrote about this week at the Center Square and discussed in this podcast. This is a Puyallup wrestler, a girl by the name of Callie Keeler, and she has wrestled, I guess, competitively and in school since she was very young, and wrestled back, I believe it was December the 6th, in a school-sponsored wrestling tournament against, turned out to be a male athlete. She didn't know it was a male. She thought it was another woman that she was wrestling against. It was not. It was a gentleman. And she claims that during that meet that he sexually assaulted her. And she reported it a couple of days later to the school. Brandy Cruz with the Undivided podcast ended up kind of connecting with this family, went to the school district and said, hey, what gives? Why haven't you reported this to police? They subsequently did, but that wasn't until January 30th, so nearly 2 full months from the date of the incident to the Pierce County Sheriff's Office getting involved. So this has now worked its way up to the Trump administration with a post today. I'll just read you that short post. It says, U.S. Ed launched an investigation into a Washington state school district, Puyallup, and a female wrestler was allegedly sexually assaulted during a match against a male competitor. The district failed to respond to her reports. The Trump administration will not tolerate this conduct. And that was the end of that post. So now we've got the Trump administration looking at this incident that happened in Puyallup. So we'll keep you posted on that one. Okay, now to a bill. I got to pull up this bill number. It's House Bill 2133 that received unanimous support in the House this week. This is a bill offered by Representative Stephanie Barnard of Pasco, and it permanently secures a property tax exemption for multi-purpose senior citizen centers. As somebody who has a mom who is herself a senior citizen, but she actually volunteers at the Auburn Senior Center because she's can run circles around a lot of the people that come in for services, me included. So this is offering a permanent tax exemption for that. And I spoke to Representative Barnard on Friday morning about this. She said this is an issue near and dear to her heart because senior centers in her community, Pasco and the Tri-Cities, she's like, people come in there for a hot lunch or to just have companionship, to play a game of checkers with other seniors. A lot of these folks may be isolated in their own homes or in their senior care homes. They don't get a lot of these opportunities otherwise. And she says the centers in her community are operating on such a razor thin margin. Any help that we can offer them for some tax relief is welcome. So this is part of my conversation this morning with Representative Stephanie Barnard and her bill, House Bill 2133.
One of the things we have to really keep a close eye on are the taxes, those tax exemptions that are going to come up to a sunset, because those tax exemptions that are reviewed periodically usually come with a 10-year sunset. So we have to be able to go back and look and say, okay, let's see what's sunsetting and try to get them to either redo it for another 10 years, or what I went for was just to make the tax exemption permanent on the senior centers. And so this really gives them, they can take a deep breath and recognize that this savings is not going to go away.
And now I get to highlight my colleagues Tim Clauser and TJ Martinell here with the Center Square Washington team on a story that Tim wrote about this week, with the city of Spokane given 2 weeks to come up with a plan to provide clean drinking water to contaminated sites around the local airport. This goes back to the PFAS chemicals, forever chemicals that the airport used with firefighting foam for years and years. And it was found in the water supply in 2017. And since then, the Department of Ecology has been working with some of those locals to come up with a plan to basically ensure that they're not putting these chemicals into the drinking water supply. So Here's that conversation with my colleagues TJ and Tim.
Welcome back to Washington in Focus Daily. I'm TJ Martinell. With me is Tim Klauser, and we're discussing a very interesting story in which Spokane has 2 weeks to come up with a plan to provide clean drinking water to contaminated sites around the local airport. Tim, it's bottled water, right?
Well, they might have to provide bottled water. The drinking water, the source itself is contaminated. So the Spokane International Airport, big airport for Spokane compared to SeaTac, these other airports, much smaller. But regardless of that, Spokane International Airport and others around the country for years use this firefighting foam that contained these chemicals called PFAS. Now, the actual name of the chemicals is much longer, but that's the shortened abbreviation, and experts often refer to them as forever chemicals, just the way they persist in the water and the habitat for so long. But essentially, groundwater sampling found PFAS in the water at the airport back in 2017. A year later, Washington State restricted the use of firefighting foams that contain PFAS. Nothing really happened in Spokane. I mean, there was a little bit over a few years, but in 2023, Ecology really stepped in. And then in 2024 and 2025, Ecology pretty much said, look, the city and the county, city of Spokane and Spokane County, they jointly own the airport. They're the liable parties here. There's going to be a cleanup. They're the ones that are responsible for it. And if they can't do it, then Ecology might do it and just send them a bill for it afterwards. So last month, the city and the county entered into this agreed order with the Department of Ecology, which was essentially just stating what I just said. Look, you guys are responsible. You guys need to pay for this and clean it up. Here's kind of the guardrails. But there was a provision in there that said, look, if we find out that this contamination has spread to properties off of the airport, you might have to provide clean drinking water for them for however long it takes to fix this issue. And I knew, everyone else knew, it was widely reported that hundreds of residential wells around the Spokane International Airport were already contaminated and had PFAS levels that were above the recommended safety level. So they knew that this was coming. But on Tuesday, the city and the county and the airport each got a letter saying, look, we're enforcing this provision. Within 2 weeks, you need to come up with a plan to provide a source of clean drinking water to the West Plains, which is this area around the airport. So this report is due by February 24th. It doesn't mean that they need to provide clean drinking water by then, but Ecology is saying, look, we expect this to start in mid to late March. So by sometime next week, this should be well underway. But essentially, they're saying, look, you either need to provide these point of entry systems, filter systems, which is essentially just like a filter that you would attach to one faucet. It's right. That specific source, or they have to provide bottled drinking water. Now, that's the short-term plan. By May, they have to come up with a long-term plan, which is either putting these point of entry filters. Sorry, I meant to say point of use before. These ones, the longer term ones would be point of entry, and that would be like a filter for the entire home. So it would cover all of the spigots, and they either have to do that or connect these parcels to the city's water source, which isn't contaminated. But essentially, it kind of just leaves them hanging. Both the city and county have grappled with budget deficits the last few years. So is the state. The state helped out a little bit with money last year, but they don't have the funding to do it this year. So some county commissioners are telling me that now they're putting pressure on the county and the city to fill that gap. And how big is that gap going to be? I don't know. We're talking about, Ecology told me it's about 4,000 parcels. It's not going to be that many homes because a lot of those are vacant or already connected to city water, but it's likely that we'll see the city and county have to provide potentially bottled water to hundreds of homes in that area for the next several months. And we're talking a 30 square mile area. That's what Ecology told me. It could be bigger, give or take. How many
people would be affected or are being affected by this?
I don't know exactly how many. I know. So when Ecology did some groundwater or private well sampling a few years ago, I think they sampled somewhere between 250 and 300 wells. And I talked to the Ecology rep about this as well. And he said, look, we expect the true number of impacted people or impacted homes to be well above what we sampled, that 250 to 300, but they don't expect it to reach the 4,000. So I know that's a big jump, but regardless, we're talking, say, even if it was just 100 homes, say, how many gallons of water do you use in a day? To multiply that by hundreds of homes, and then it's the city and the county having to provide that outside of the other water services that they're providing. This isn't something that was pre-budgeted for. This is a bill that just got put on their desk and said, look, we don't even know how much this bill is going to be. Just start doing it and fill in the blanks later.
Is this something that could have been prevented or avoided? Or is that depending on who you ask?
I mean,
right?
I think it's going to depend on who you ask. I mean, talking to the county commissioner, one of the county commissioners, Al French, who's really spearheaded a lot of this work, he said that in an ideal world, he would like to see the FFA or the FAA step in and provide some sort of funding, because the FAA kind of provides guidelines to the airports across the country on what types of materials and chemicals they should be using and training with. And this was just the norm. Like, this isn't just a Spokane issue. This is a nationwide issue. I mean, I cover Spokane, so it's a particular issue for me, but the contamination is not unique to Spokane. Maybe it leaked into their water some more, but he kind of places blame on them. He's saying, look, we were training with what you guys told us to train with. So how is it our fault? Why should we have to pay to fix this problem that arguably wasn't caused by us? And I can understand that too, but there's also, there's claims through other reporting that this was an issue known for years and that it was just kind of swept on the rug or made to seem like it wasn't that big of a deal. There's this West Plains Water Coalition, which is essentially this local water advocacy group. They argue that the issue has been going on for not since 2017, but for years. I mean, that's when they first detected it in the water. They were using these firefighting foams for many years before that, dumping a lot of this fluid and foam just onto the runway. In a presentation I was listening to earlier today at the airport, they were talking about how, a lot of this would run off into a ditch. And there's a ditch that doesn't connect, but it's in very close proximity to the Spokane International Airport and then Fairchild Air Force Base, which is not that far away. And the Fairchild Air Force Base has its own issue with PFAS, but that's on the federal government to fix. But given their close proximity and this ditch in between them, it's contaminating all of that area around them as well. So when Ecology sent out this letter on Tuesday and said, look, there's this 30 square mile area, you're going to have to provide clean drinking water to them. They also said, look, if we find out that the impact is bigger than we first expected, then we're going to expand this map and you're going to have to provide water to them as well.
I mean, it's kind of crazy that they are able to dump this stuff and it goes straight into the water, into the water supply. It can end up like that. And I'm wondering, what are the policies with private sector industries that use this stuff as well? Is there any type of regulation for them that's different? I mean, if it's illegal for the private sector, you think it would also, for environmental reasons, it'd also be illegal. The chemicals don't suddenly become more environmentally friendly because it's being used by the government.
Well, I think and I would need to do some more research on this. It was used across the country. I think it was kind of one of those things where they didn't realize how bad it was until later on, and then it kept being used. But Washington State in 2018, the year after they detected it at Spokane International Airport, whether or not that's related to the state action, the state passed this law restricting the use of firefighting foams that contain PFAS. So the state tried to step in, but I mean, like I said earlier, experts call them forever chemicals. We can stop using them today. It doesn't mean that they're gone a year from now.
Right. It's kind of the same thing with I think it's PCB is a chemical I think was banned in the 70s or was used in the 70s, but it's banned now, but it's still showing up in the water supply. And so wastewater management treatment facilities over the years can't get rid of them because they don't go away. And so that's really interesting that they're facing this. I mean, What's the worst case scenario? This thing just drags out because nobody can decide whose responsibility it is, who's going to pay for it, or is this likely to get resolved one way or the other easily?
We know whose responsibility it is and who's going to pay for it according to the paperwork. The State Department of Ecology says, look, it's the city and county's responsibility. They're going to pay for this. If they can't figure it out, then Ecology might just do it and send them the bill for it. But I think, how long is this going to take? They expect it to take a while. They're hoping for the long-term plan, like connecting those larger filters, which are more expensive, or connecting these parcels to the city's water supply. They expect that work to take place or to begin later in 2026, potentially 2027. So I don't really know how long the timeline is going to be here. It's pretty tentative. But at the same time, what is success here? Because you have Spokane County. It's a pretty rural area. Yeah, a lot of these are residential drinking wells, but you have a lot of farmland in this area. So you could say, oh, maybe 2 years from now, maybe they have these filters, maybe it's all fixed. But how many people lost their livelihoods in that time? How many people have had their farms for generations and lost it?
Well, and that's going to be an issue of the law, like potential lawsuits against the state, which is to say taxpayers are going to be paying and footing the bill. They're going to have to pay for the cleanup. They're going to have to pay for any lawsuits and damages that were incurred. It seems like with these forever chemicals, they don't know that they're forever when they first start using them, and then it's after the fact. So it seems like this is something that might not have been avoidable, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye out on it.
So that's it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I got to give you a quick tease for what's coming up Monday, which may be the most significant debate that we're going to see so far on the Senate floor, because that's when the income tax bill is set to come up for a floor vote. It's going to be intense debate ahead of that, and we're going to be here to cover it. I sat down today and spoke to Senate Minority Leader John Braun of Centralia about this. So we'll bring you that Monday in our podcast episode. So day 33 of the session is in the books, and we're going to be watching it. I will be providing an update on our state page, Center Square Washington page, before today is out, with an update on how things went on the initiative killer debate on the Senate floor. So for now, thanks for watching another episode, and have a great weekend.